Every every company that I've worked for, that I've consulted for, actually has always asked, what do you think of AI? How can we incorporate AI? And I always say, like, we need to have very thoughtful conversations about this. There is certainly a way that we can use AI in your company, and there's certainly a way that AI can save you some money. Almost certainly, right? There's ways that we can do this, but you have to be cognizant of what kind of experience do you want your employees to have, and what kind of experience do you want your customers to have. And that is where you start. That's the first place you start. Like, that's not where you end. You don't put in AI and think, oh, the customers are going to love this. No, that's not how you go. You start with what kind of experience do you want your employees and your customers to have, and then you figure out, okay, what tools, what can we take off their plate, where can AI assist them, and also where can we not skimp. Like, there are places you just can't skimp. Like,
Congratulations. You made it. The wait is over. Part 2 is here. Hi, I'm Sarah Caminiti, and you have landed on Epical Growth. This is part 2 of my episode with Stephanie Lundberg. It is titled The Art of Being Dead Inside. Now, the intro clip was not one that I had originally intended on using. If you are checking out all the clips that I'm adding to the YouTube page, you'll understand that there are so many incredible nuggets from part 2 of this conversation. The reason why I picked it was because it really does explain the climate right now for where we are with customer support. On my drive to work this morning, I was listening to a podcast about AI. It was about the founder of OpenAI. And in one of the episodes, it was talking about the doomsday effect of AI and the sci-fi hypothetical worst case scenario. AI is going to take over the world in like 5 years type of headspace. And they had someone on that was talking about how that ends up taking away from actual issues and from the reality of things. And yeah, it's very sexy to talk about those Minority Report or whatever type of sci-fi movie reference you want to put in there for AI being everything. But the reality is that there's much more important current things that we could be spending our time and energy and resources diving into. And Stephanie talks about noise and paying close attention to what matters. She and I both are very candid about our feelings in the way that support as a profession is valued within companies. But there has been so much noise about AI taking over every single job within support. And there are companies that have made terrible mistakes by doing that, sure. But the reality is, we should be spending our time talking about what Steph mentioned, which is, what are you actually trying to solve with AI? How are you going to use this to make the experience for the employee, the experience for the customer that much greater? Have you defined that yet? Or are you going towards a shiny toy? Those in the support community understand that we have been talking about this within our space for a very long time. This is not new, feeling undervalued as a member of a company, as a leadership in a company. The only difference is now there's a lot of noise about being replaceable on a scale so great that it's not even human. Notice Steph and I talk about what it actually means to be human and commit to being a better human. That was what I loved so much about this conversation, and I'm so happy to be able to share the entirety of it with you now. And I'm sure there will be many multiple part series with Steph again in the future. Support professionals are not replaceable. Support professionals deserve respect, the tools and opportunities and knowledge to be successful in their job, the space to ask questions, the space to be angry. So I won't make you wait any longer. The time has come. Part 2 is about to begin. I gave you a little bit of extra from the last part just so you can slowly ease your way back into Epical Growth. Episode 9, The Art of Being Dead Inside. Part 2 with Stephanie Lundberg.
all day long, or all
all night long. But dang, you touch on so many things that I'm so passionate about because it is it is bullshit. Like it's
Hmm.
bullshit.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that I've been trying this new thing of poorly talking to the camera for the first time in my life, of like on the phone and like letting my words out into the open,
Yeah.
and I go back and I look at it and I look so angry in all of these videos, and
I know.
I'm so
That's
I'm
oh,
not an angry person, but I'm so
and
angry when
I'm
I'm
so
talking
glad
about
you
this.
mentioned that. Genuinely, I'm so glad you mentioned that because I worry about that every issue, which has only been like it's only been like maybe 7 or 8 issues. I have to count. I don't even remember how many issues of Support Human Roundup there's been. But every single issue, I'm so worried about that. And that's why like I go back and I have, trusted friends where I'll send, especially like the main pieces, like the news pieces. I'll send them those parts. I'm like, okay, you need to tell me if I'm going too far in one direction, like if I'm being too nice or too mean. And then especially like the jokes and bad job bingo, a lot of times I'll send different people the jokes and bad job bingo because
That's a good idea.
I I am so worried about be well, like I just don't one, you always want to punch up, right? You never want to punch down. That's really, really, really important to me. One, it also genuinely has to be funny. Like it can't just be bitter. Um, I I I'm really, really worried about things just being bitter or just being angry, because it's not helpful. Um I talk about I had this there's some stuff going on like around bad job bingo, and I wrote this ridiculous, and I talked about it in the last issue of um uh Support Human Roundup. I wrote like this allegory about power, like about Power Rangers, because I used to watch the Power Rangers growing up and I loved like the pink Power Ranger. Anyway, and I talk about it in there how I hate being angry. I don't like just being angry because it's not, and if I ever publish it, you can read it, whatever. I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day because it's really emo. Um, but like I talk about how anger is not productive. Anger by itself, I don't
Yes.
like just being angry because it makes me feel powerless, right? Like I don't like feeling powerless. And anger on its own is very destructive. And I don't believe in just being destructive. Like if there's going to be conflict, and there always will be conflict, you'll never
Mhm.
have, as a society, in tech, whatever, in a community, whatever community you're building, there's always going to be conflict. The important thing is that that conflict is constructive, that it's productive, that it's moving us towards something better, right? And so when I'm doing the newsletter, that is like my number one concern constantly, is that I'm not just being angry, I'm not just being bitter. I can be really acerbic, I can be really, really sarcastic. I can be really harsh with my language sometimes, but I don't want that to be all there is. Like, there's got to be hope at the end of the tunnel, right? Or light at the end of the tunnel. There's got to be some light there, because otherwise, I'm just, again, like you said, like I'm just putting noise out into the world. There's got to be something that comes from it, and so um, I'm so glad that you were, like you said, like I just look angry. Sometimes I worry like that I just sound angry all the time, and I don't. Yeah, I worry about that constantly because I don't want to just be angry. It's not useful, and I want to be useful.
No,
So
it's not useful. It's
yeah,
not useful. But it's like I have such mixed feelings about the emotion of anger in this space because I
yes,
don't really I don't allow anger really into my
hmm,
life in any other area
hmm,
except for this one specific thing about the respect of
hmm,
support professionals,
yeah,
and we have such an advantage, and I'm sure that when your friends and colleagues are reading your things to edit, your articles to edit, and they're looking for it, they probably have the time. I can't find much to change because a part of the way that we convey information is through a solution,
hmm,
and our anger is
hmm,
rooted in opportunity, and
hmm,
that's kind of how we've trained ourselves to behave, and
hmm,
it almost makes it even more frustrating because the folks that are like sharing this information with the
Mhm.
world and being loud and maybe showing some angry emotions about it,
Mhm.
some big feelings, as I would say to my 4-year-old, are doing so with, okay, it is
Mhm.
because of this that we feel this.
Yeah.
Therefore, might we try this? Or
Mhm.
if we look at this, or ask me a question about this, like everything's always followed up with, I won't say always, but for the most part, it's followed
Yeah.
up with, I think this would be helpful if we
Yeah.
if we looked at it this way or tried this way. And
Mhm.
and the thing that makes me so angry is it they don't do it. They don't
Yeah.
do it. And
Yeah.
it's just like, okay, well, you know what? Maybe I'll start asking the CEOs and the CFOs of these companies, like, what is it that you need when people start coming into these spaces? Like, what do you want
Yeah.
them to present? How do you want them to talk to you? Because you're not telling the people on your team anything. And if they mess
Yeah.
up when they do have that chance, you're just not inviting them back. And 4 years later, you're
Yeah.
going to say, this one time in June in 2015, you had this report that you gave me and it sucked. And after that,
Yeah.
I just really realized we failed you and you're terrible at your job. And it's just like, what? How are you supposed to move forward from that? And you're
Yeah.
not. Like, that's why they do it.
Yeah.
You are not supposed to move forward.
Exactly.
Otherwise, they would have looped you back in and said maybe you
Yeah.
should use a different font next time.
Yeah.
So it's just,
I
yeah.
I think you're so right. And I actually think you make a really good point that because because I'm so worried about just coming across as angry, I also sometimes worry about going too far in the other direction. It's it's very difficult. Like just, oh man, no, it sounds very complainy, but I think one of the things that I also think is really really fair is that which people have spoken much more eloquently than I. But anger is a tool, and anger is also communication. And it is okay to be angry when you have something to be angry about, right? Like,
Yes.
you don't always, when, especially like, I'm a woman, I feel some oppression. Like, we're not going to get into the oppression Olympics, but there are some folks out there who are angry and legitimately angry and probably tried being nice first. They probably tried being productive first, and now they're just pissed off. Like, that is totally valid, right? Like, it is
Yep.
valid to be angry when you have something to be angry about. Um, and I've also found, like, and this is one of the reasons why I talk so much about organizational culture in Bad Job Bingo, on my websites and in various writings that I have done, is because, like, in almost all places where I've worked, when change has needed to occur, when conflict has come into play, everybody who's operating in good faith, everybody who is operating in good faith tried the regular channels first, like the channels that were endorsed. Like, you go to your boss, they go to their boss. Like, you post in Slack, you stay in a thread, like you send an email, you keep it private, like you message somebody, like you do all that first, right? Like, you do that stuff first, and that doesn't work, right? It's supposed to work, but it doesn't work. And when you're a job candidate, right? Like, you message people on LinkedIn, you put in your job application, you go through the job interview process, and you're operating in good faith, right? But that doesn't mean the people on the other side are operating in good faith. And you have very little power as a worker, or as an employee, I should say, or as a job candidate, to do anything about that, right? And so, you know then once you go through all the endorsed channels, like the official channels, then that's when things start to leak out and people start to get frustrated. And that frustration, you try to keep it productive, but maybe it's not productive. Maybe it just turns into conflict, right? But like, it happens because people are not being heard, and it happens because the system is not changing through the endorsed avenues of change, right? And so, you know, if Bad Job Bingo is not necessarily going to make hiring managers happy, and that's just kind of the way it is. Like, it's not going to make them happy. It is not necessarily there for hiring managers. It's there to help candidates understand what the playing field actually is, and like to talk to each other about these things and create a space where conversation can be had, and also to just be a billboard, like saying like this is real, right? Because when we're individuals and we're looking at something individually, we think this is just me, I'm the only one experiencing this. And when we're not talking to each other about it, it's very easy just to get bogged down in that, where I am the only one experiencing this. It's just me. And when it's just you, it is very easy for, hiring managers, companies to explain that away, right? It's just this one candidate. Like, it's not a theme, it's not a trend, it's not a bad way of doing things or a counterproductive way of doing things or discriminatory way of doing things. It's just this one, it's just a one off, right? It's an exception. And it's very easy for us to accept that because we're not talking to each other, and there's no public way to see that that's not true. And so, that's one of the major functions of the newsletter and of Bad Job Bingo specifically, is to help people understand that it's not just them. And even if there's nothing that you can do about it, that is so powerful to know that it's not just you, right? It's so powerful to know that you're not alone in something, and that there are people who can help you. And because when you start chatting with each other, you can network, you can, and it also, you can understand better what you're looking for in a company, and you can connect with companies that are looking for you, right? You have values alignment, right? And what's a values alignment for you is not necessarily a values alignment for me, but you got a
Yes.
better idea of what that is, and earlier on in the process what that's going to look like for both of you, right? And it's the same for companies. Companies can use the information that candidates are speaking about publicly and saying, hey, this experience of me being ghosted by these companies, or by them, they'll list one thing that I saw recently in a community that I'm in is they'll list a salary that's fairly high. I'll get into an interview with them. I'm a great candidate, and they'll come back and say, oh, by the way, actually the salary is lower. We didn't realize that, we didn't align on the salary before. Actually, it's like 70, 60, 80, 90 grand lower than what we told you it was going to be. Do you want to continue? And there's been a lot of that. And so I was seeing people like chatting, like there's actually a lot of that. And so companies can see that and say, hey, we don't have to operate that way. We know that we can be very competitive in this space, in this design space, in this, software tech for engineers, whatever you're making as a company. We can be really competitive to potential employees by just not behaving this way, right? By being really transparent, by being candidate first. We can get really fantastic candidates, and they'll be clamoring to work for us because we'll have like our pick of the best, because we just treat people better. We treat people like humans. And so I don't think it's just one way. I don't think it's just candidates who can benefit from all of us talking more openly about the problems in hiring and the problems in job seeking. I think companies have a lot to gain and a lot to learn from participating in this discussion. And yeah,
Yes.
sorry, that was a
Yeah.
very long soliloquy.
Um, it was the most beautiful soliloquy, and it also has so many parallels to customer support. I mean,
Yeah.
it is treating people well. I mean, and not even screw customer support. It has so many parallels to
Mhm.
just being a human in the world.
Being human.
Like,
Hmm.
yeah, like what? How powerful is it to commit to being better? Like,
Hmm.
actually commit to being better, to being intentional with your time, with your words, with the people that you introduce to your space, to being thoughtful and patient, and it's like it is, and that's one of the reasons too, I think, why support professionals are so frustrated, because through these interactions that we get to have with customers on a regular basis, we see the value of kindness. I mean, it's black and white. It
Hmm.
is, if
Yeah.
you are kind to someone, even if you tell them,
Mhm.
no, I cannot refund you for 17 years of your subscription service that you forgot about, but I'll give you
Yeah.
$3 back, uh,
Yeah.
and you do it in a kind way, then they'll feel okay at the end of it. Why does
Yeah.
it have to just be this one profession that is really taking a
Mhm.
stand on the value that that has in companies'
Mhm.
positioning, in hiring processes, in just holding the
Mhm.
door for someone at the grocery store? It's just like, if you want someone to recommend your service as a
Mhm.
candidate, as a customer, whatever, the best
Yeah.
way to do that is to make an impact. And
Yeah.
the easiest way to make an impact is to just do a small kindness. And
Yeah.
in most of these cases, it is a small, small kindness. It is
Yeah.
sending a rejection email that doesn't have a list of book recommendations for using this to
Oh,
level up, or
yeah.
seen one of those. And did I send an email to the CEO after telling him how insulting it was? Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Because who do you like, really take a moment and reflect on yourself as a human in this world?
Yeah.
Because if that is what you think folks who just got their 90,000th rejection email really want to see, that's the takeaway, then you should probably do some deep, deep, deep thinking. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's just being a good person and just
Yeah.
trying to be a good person. And it has the ripple effects that honestly, like, change the world. And it's
Yeah.
as easy as just being thoughtful with your job descriptions, introducing people to your
Yeah.
company in a way, because it's not just candidates too, Steph, that are looking at these job descriptions. It's customers,
Oh,
because
yeah.
we live in a
Mhm.
time when the values that our companies that we're giving our money to have,
Yes,
they matter.
matters.
They
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah. And I think yeah, I think you're, spot on that. And I think the difficulty now, especially, is when you see venture capital kind of tightening up and drying up, and you have, companies who are now trying to be very they're penny pinching in some of the wrong areas, I think, necessarily. Like, customer support is not cheap. It's not like it doesn't have to be super expensive, but it's not cheap. And no amount of AI is going to make up for human connection. And so AI is not going to be able to connect with your customers. It's not going to be able to provide a good customer experience. There is a place for it. There is a place for it
Yes.
in helping your customer support team. There's a place for it in freeing up other parts of your team and your customer support team from doing labor that is not necessarily stuff that they need to be doing. There's a place for it, right? But you need humans to talk to humans to figure out what those humans need. You can't fire a customer support team and replace them with AI and expect your customers to have the same level of care and experience with your company that they had before, and they're not going to think of your company the same way that they did before, and you're going to spend a lot of money trying to claw them back once you realize that. um, and so I think that's the danger, especially right now. So I'm glad you mentioned that, because it is a problem. It is an issue we're seeing, because you can't replace humans with machines. It's just not going to work.
No,
It just
no.
doesn't.
And the
No.
worst ones are the ones that are like, oh, yes, let me connect you to Susan. And Susan is actually another
The
bot
chat
that
bot.
they have. And
Yes. Yeah.
and there's no page anymore for contacting support, and the email that you used in the past bounces back. And
Yeah.
what message does that give to the customer? That message is, we do not value you enough to staff people that are thoughtful and skilled to
Yeah.
provide you with help when you find
Hmm.
yourself in situations where you need help.
Yeah.
Why would you ever want that to be your message?
Yeah. No value, only profit.
Yes.
It's in one of the newsletters. There's this cartoon that I love. There's this dog. Anyway, I won't describe it because it's never as good as when you can actually read it. But it's like this idea that companies can just extract value from customers constantly without giving anything back to them, really, or without meeting their expectation of care. And I just don't think it's not a long-term strategy. It's a very short-sighted short-term strategy. It might work to save you money in the short term. In the long term, it will screw you over. It will screw your company over, and it's just not a good idea. And it's so funny because every company that I've worked for, that I've consulted for actually has always asked, what do you think of AI? How can we incorporate AI? And I always say, like, we need to have very thoughtful conversations about this. There is certainly a way that we can use AI in your company, and there's certainly a way that AI can save you some money. Almost certainly, right? There's ways that we can do this, but you have to be cognizant of what kind of experience do you want your employees to have, and what kind of experience do you want your customers to have. And that is where you start. That's the first place you start. Like, that's not where you end. You don't put in AI and think, oh, the customers are going to love this. No, that's not how you go. You start with what kind of experience do you want your employees and your customers to have, and then you figure out, okay, what tools, what can we take off their plate, where can AI assist them, or and also where can we not skimp? Like, there are places you just can't skimp. Like, you know chatbots are great, chatbots for initial conversations, but if you're going to transfer them to somebody, it should be to a human, right? It should be easy for that person to say, hey, I need to talk to an agent. And there's a reason why in phone trees, like, I don't, we talk about this, jokingly in other communities where if you start cursing in a phone tree, it'll immediately send you to an agent. So that's kind of a shortcut to getting to talking to a real person because they can tell that you're frustrated. That's a kind of a, way to signal how you're feeling. So, I mean, there's a reason why that exists. So anyway, again, I could talk about this forever. I could rant about um, the dangers of thinking that you can just extract money and value from customers forever without giving anything back. It just doesn't work.
Well, it's going to be a fun, shiny object period of time that
Hmm.
will end up. I mean, I'll be honest. Like, there is this glimmer of, glass half full in me, while also being a little bit half empty, a lot empty, of this focus on AI and how it's going to replace customer support. And we're using it to do all these things that humans will never, ever be able to do. And there are these tools that will be better always than humans, and then that's going to crash and burn. And once it crashes and
Hmm.
burns, then they're going to have to actually think about who support professionals are and the value that
Hmm.
they bring to companies, and how that data actually could be used, and why it's different when AI extracts data and a human extracts
Hmm.
data, and why it's
Yes.
different when
Hmm.
someone de-escalates something versus a bot who has
Hmm.
been trained in Psychology Today, magazines on how to de-escalate things. But it's
Oh
just
no.
like, maybe, I mean, I don't know if that's true, but I could definitely see it happening. But I mean, maybe all of us finally talking, because another good thing that came out of AI is support professionals are actually able to have a space where we can show our
Hmm.
value based, like, in terms of, wait a second, you want, there's now this AI service that the purpose of it is to analyze, the purpose is to keep an eye on time zones and how
Hmm.
tickets from this period of time interact with tickets from this period of time, like all of these
Hmm.
things that support professionals do manually on a daily basis.
Yes.
Now
Yes.
it's actually being a feature that people are getting excited about, and like, oh my gosh, we have to get this thing. It's this. It's like, you do know that humans here have been doing this, and doing this in a very underpaid way for years and
Yes.
years and years and
Yes.
years. So I have liked that, because no one outside of support, not no one, I mean, I've been saying these really firm statements, but most outside of support do not understand the mental intelligence, the
Hmm.
brain power, the
Hmm.
just the incredible humans that exist in this space, and the smart humans that exist in this space that do things with their brain, that we're so lucky to have them in our community, and they don't get recognized because quiet work
Hmm.
is invisible work.
Yeah.
And it's just it's been it's just it's an interesting time. It's an interesting time.
Yeah. And it's been sort of interesting to see sort of the peaks and valleys, I think, as well. I think we're still sort of going through that. And I think, um, I mean, especially with AI, even, I think some of the recent layoffs weren't just driven by the evaporation of, influxing funding. Like, I don't think it was just the evaporation of money coming into tech and coming into new startups that caused the layoffs. I think some of it was driven by AI, and so that was a valley. And I think we're seeing an uptick again in support hiring because people are now understanding that these expensive AI tools were maybe oversold a little bit, right? There was a functional misunderstanding for a long time, and not just with leadership that I was talking about, but like with other, sometimes with other like support leaders too, where we would be having a conversation about AI, and like they would understand AI something very different than what I would understand AI is. Like, even the most powerful AI that we have right now, and I know that I'm preaching to the choir here, but even the most powerful artificial intelligence we have is not intelligent. It is a very powerful next word or next pixel predictor. Like that is what it is. So it's not actually intelligent, right? And when we talk about these tools as if they are intelligent, as if they can spontaneously create things, we're kind of creating that space for our own like elimination, right? Like, it's not possible for an AI. We can train an AI, we can tell it what to say, and a lot of AI, especially some of these AI support tools, are just very, very extensive, like phone tree like things or chat tree like things, right? Like, it's, here's, if you say this, say that, right? Um, and so it's not actually intelligence. And so we have to be very careful about how we talk about this, right? Because these tools have been oversold. And I think companies are starting to realize that. And we're seeing an upswing in support hiring again, partially because of that, and partially because things are sort of evening out market wise. I'm not an analyst. Please take everything I say with a grain of salt. But this is just me having, spending way too much time on LinkedIn and, doing a lot of research, as you have to do when you're writing. But like, I, yeah, sometimes I think we are sort of the agents of our own demise when we put too much stock into AI, get too enthusiastic about AI. I have to be very measured. And also, one of the things that worries me about AI, since we're kind of on this subject now and we're talking about it, is, and I actually wrote about this in the newsletter one time, is that, with every new frontier we hit with AI also comes many, many security and privacy concerns. And some companies I have seen, and some of them have said this explicitly, that we're coming out with new technologies and we need people to figure out what the problems are and what the risks are once we come out with these technologies. And that's really not the way we should be moving with this. Like, we need to slow way, way down, because we are exposing not just our companies, but our customers to great potential risk when you can have someone who can wield the power of, voice AI. They can get between me and a customer. They can call, and I think I'm talking to a customer and I'm really talking to an AI. So like, that's not, we are introducing that as we kind of hit the frontier of things. And I think it's more time we kind of acknowledge that as support people, that, there's a lot that AI can do for us, and there's a lot that AI can destroy in terms of our relationship and our trust with customers. And we need to also be communicating that to customers, that there are certainly security and privacy risks here that we need to be acknowledging and working to counteract.
I'm so happy that you said that because and if you do end up having to leave because it's like that, please let me know. But I could really talk to you for hours. The One of the things, because I made a point to start talking to a lot of these AI companies.
Mhm.
They're always happy to talk to you, and
Mhm.
I use that really as a chance to understand the QA of it all, because that's something that I've recognized in most of these AI spaces. Uh, that's an
Mhm.
afterthought. Like, it's the like how. how do we know that every single interaction is accurate? How do we know that every single interaction is of quality, or that the customer wasn't
Mhm.
trying to get to a human for an hour and they just kept getting all of these random things thrown at them? Like, who is paying attention to this? And what do you have to flag these things? Because, I mean, I know that I'm an
Mhm.
outlier in my obsession with QA, but in my last position, I read every ticket. I QA'd every single interaction that we had with customers, and I drilled down the information. I extracted everything I could from, do we need documentation improvements? Is there an issue with due diligence? How many people were involved in it? Because
Mhm.
if we're just doing QA on 3 tickets from this one topic every month, that's not QA. That's just
Mm-mm.
reading 3 random things and maybe something will come out of it. But odds are you're not going to be that great of a selector that you're going to be able to spot all of the problem tickets randomly and blindly. So, what are you doing with QA? Is it going to be someone's entire job to track every interaction
Mhm.
to find out when they mess up? Because if you don't, then that's how AI learns. So you're not teaching AI.
Yeah.
And that's the whole point of having it there. It just like, I don't, that's something that I don't get with the whole AI thing.
Yeah. It's so funny to me because there'll be this whole ecosystem built around, managing the AI when you could just hire people to do it. Like you're not, it's just so funny to me. Like you're not saving any money. You're not, and in the meantime, you're just creating frustration and obstacles between you and the customer. So like the trade-offs don't necessarily make sense to me when you have to, you have to hire somebody to train the AI, you have to hire somebody to QA the AI, you have to hire somebody to like, implement the AI and like, it's not I don't know, it's not ideal. And I don't actually think it scales as well as people think it does. Because for as many customers as you have, you're going to have so many new questions that you cannot anticipate. And that's why humans are so valuable, because humans can go research. Humans understand the difference between true information and untrue information. And AI cannot. AI does not cannot because it's not intelligent. It cannot tell you what is true and what is not. It cannot, see that for itself. So it's just wild to me. I just think it's one of those strange conversations that we're having about how, this ecosystem has sprung up about training and doing all this stuff with AI, where you could just hire people, just hire people, employ people, and let them have a livelihood and treat them well, and there you go. You have your actual intelligence and not artificial intelligence. I think there's just
It's,
some
yeah,
very
it's,
understandable excitement
and are you
around the
frozen again?
sci-fi-ness
You're
of it. Like it's
frozen.
just cutting edge and like
Are
we
you back?
love
Are you back?
technology and it's exciting. Like it's
Huh?
thrilling. I wanted hoverboards. Like I thought we'd have hoverboards by now and I'm really disappointed that we don't. Um, but we don't. And so I think we just need to kind of let that go a little bit and just be happy to have, humans who know how to do things.
Yeah. Yeah. And be excited that we have humans that know how to do
Yes,
things,
exactly.
and continue to have a career in this space for a very long,
Yes.
long time.
Long, long time,
God,
hopefully.
this has been just like the best. The best. Can I just like have you on retainer to have these
Yes,
calls with all the
anytime.
time?
Eh,
Um I hope everyone has a long car ride planned. But
yeah.
so I like to end the episodes by asking all of the folks that gift me with their time to think about what era they are in or what era they are moving into. And Steph, what is your era?
Oh man, this is such a good question, and I struggled with this. I think it's gonna sound so corny and like very woo-woo-y, so I apologize in advance for it. But I think I'm in the era of like just finding my voice. Just like really figuring out uh I would Facebook is the worst, but I was watching a video of Facebook where a guy was saying like, whatever freak you are, like, just be that freak and people will like you more. Like, just commit to being freaky. So I'm in my freak phase is what I'm doing right now. I'm committing to be as weird as I possibly can, and kind of embracing it and understanding that um, this is just who I am, and that's cool. And, I'm not going to be for everybody, and everybody is not going to be for me. And we will all be fine. It will be fine if we're
Yes,
not
ma'am.
for everybody. It's a good thing, right? We don't
That is
always
such a
connect with everything, and we don't have to. So I guess
and
that's
that's
my
okay.
era. I'm just figuring out
I
who
love
I
that
am.
era. I love that
Yeah.
era. What a great era for your kids to see, because that is such
Yes.
an important thing to just practice instead of tell them over and over again. To just
Mhm.
own who you are because you are special and wonderful, and you have a space in this world. And Steph, you have such a huge space in this community, in this world, and you are making people actually feel empowered enough to like just own their value and own their worth in this climate and in the industry, and talk about it and be respectful when they talk about it. And that is because of the way that you write, and that is because of the way that you present yourself. And we are better because of you. So thank you for being open enough to doing it here and letting us be a part of it.
Oh, thank you so much. That means so much. I so appreciate that. And it was such a pleasure talking to you. Yeah. Keep me on retainer.
I will.
I'll lower my fee. No, I'm kidding.
Thank you. Thank you. I will invoice you. So be honest. What did you really think about hanging out with me twice in 1 week? I mean, you weren't really hanging out with me, you were hanging out with Steph, and I think anybody would want to hang out with Steph multiple times throughout the week. Coming up with Epical Growth, you will be seeing, for the most part, a consistent schedule of Tuesday and Friday. Tuesdays and Fridays are going to be split into different types of topics. Sometimes, other times, they may have a common theme. I'll let you know before we dive into the week. But there's so many great people I am very excited for you to meet. Please make sure that you have subscribed to the new YouTube page. That's the Epical Growth YouTube page. That's where I am sharing all of those magical little treats that the Epical Growth guests have shared with me and with you listeners. So, after you listen to an episode, if there's something that stuck with you, more than likely it stuck with me too, and I extracted it and I made a clip out of it. If you like it, share it. So I'll see you in a couple of days. If you haven't followed on Apple or Spotify, make sure that you do, especially since things are going to be coming at you multiple times throughout the week. There may be some sponsors coming soon, which is exciting. If you are a company or a person that has interest in sponsoring or being promoted on Epical Growth, please reach out. I would love to chat. Thanks for hanging around and see you soon. This is Epical Growth. I'm Sarah Caminiti. I hope you have a great day.